children, let's start the day with a few new math problems. What is 5 times 2? Come on, children, don't be shy. Just give it your best shot. Yes, Clyde?
12.
Okay, now let's try to get an answer from someone who's not a complete retard. Anyone? Come on, don't be shy.
I think I know the answer, Mr. Garrison. Shut up, fat boy! Hey, don't call me fat, you fucking Jew!
Eric, did you just say the F word?
Jew? No, he's talking about... You can't say fucking school, you fucking fat ass.
Kyle!
Why the No!
Eric!
Dude, you just said again.
Stanley!
Who?
Kenny!
What's the big deal? It doesn't hurt anybody.
How would you like to go see the school counselor?
How would you like to suck my...
What did you say?
I'm sorry. Actually, what I said was... How would you like to suck my... Mr. Garrison. Holy dude.
All right, your boy Sons to One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are listening to The Booth, January 31st, 2018. We are just days away from Super Bowl 52, the New England Patriots taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in Minnesota. A lot of talk, a lot of things going on. Gronkowski announced today that he'll be playing in this game, but they have yet to release him out of the concussion protocol. So we're going to see what's going to happen there. Tom Brady, just a few days ago, had the 12 stitches removed from his hand, but he's still wearing gloves. Tom Brady's been all over the news this week, not just about his hand, but because of the incident now with his daughter and WEI, which was complete ignorance on the part of WEI. But again, bad press is helping WEI get their name out there nationally. But if you haven't heard the news, what happened was Tom Brady has this new show on Facebook called Tom versus Time, and they introduced us to his kids, and one of the guys on EI had the nerve to call Tom Brady's daughter an annoying little pissant. Now, I wish I had the soundbite from Tom Brady, because Tom Brady does this thing where he calls in on Monday mornings, he talks with WEI, and Tom Brady comes on, he's real polite. He turns around and just says, I've done this show for many, many years. I've never had a problem. I've always been there when you guys have wanted me to. But to have someone on this show talk about my daughter, it kind of crossed the line. He says he's going to have to rethink his status with the network. Now, 98.5 The Hub is the big sports station here in Boston. They're nipping at the heels of WEI, who's been drinking from the golden chalice for the longest time. But they've been under a lot of scrutiny. They've been kind of trying to be these sports shock jocks type of thing. But when you talk about some of these daughters, such as Tom Brady's daughter, there's ramifications to be answered. And I would not be surprised if 98.5 cuts a deal or makes an offer to try to get Tom Brady over there for next season and years after that, especially where Scott Zolak is now over there at 98.5. I don't know if you guys were aware of this story, because we're jumping right in today. Were you guys aware of this? I've got Ken Diesel. I've got R Squared out with me tonight.
Yeah, I heard about it, and I think both sides are acting like a bunch of children on a playground. Look, they shouldn't have said about Tom Brady's daughter or about anyone's daughter. But I think Tom Brady overreacted a bit, and I think both of them should be sent to their rooms without any dessert.
Yeah, I was aware of it. I saw it on the internet. But, I would say this. I mean, I sort of agree with Diesel there in the sense of unless the radio station has a habit of speaking this way, not just about Tom Brady's family, but generally about people's family. But if it's just a one-off thing, then you admonish the guy, you say what you have to say, and you move on. If it's habitual practice, then you walk away.
Well, I think the issue here is that he's got – it's not like this is just a radio show thing. I think it's because he has a contract with them, and he's had this contract with them. So it's kind of like if you're the employer, you pretty much – it's almost like that situation here in Brockton with the plow contract where the guy pushed the snow up into the people's driveway because he was pissed off, and it almost cost the city the plow contract. So what they did was they ended up firing the guy – who had the plow contract. I think this is more about loyalty to an exclusive guest that you pay to have come on the show. So it's almost like if we had an exclusive guest that we had coming on here, and then we say something about their wife or their child, I think that's where Tom Brady was mad, and I think that's where he went into this. So big story. You know, it's flying around. We wanted to touch base on that. We got the Rocky versus Rocky that we've got going on. This bet that was authored between the mayors that I wrote. And it's picked up steam. It's been on CBS Sports. It's been nationwide. I actually tagged Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone actually put a thing out there about the statues about 2 days later. He put another post up this week of Thunder Lips and him, and he put the helmets of each team on each of them. And then today, I just had a friend hit me up, and a friend of mine, husband, is Mark Wahlberg's private jet's pilot. Can you say, is that crazy or what?
That's a really close relationship, apparently.
Yes, I actually just got the picture of Mark Wahlberg and my friend's husband before they're getting on the plane. She says, "What is it that you need him to know?" That was kind of what she said. I sent her the info. I tagged her I tagged everything. My fingers are now crossed because we've got the mayors involved. So whatever team loses, they're dressing up their statue in the other team's attire. But my other thing was, let's make this a win-win for the cities involved. And Sylvester Stallone is this big Eagles fan. Mark Wahlberg is this big Patriots fan. And I feel like if whatever team loses, it would be nice if those people would go and put those jerseys on those statues, or vice versa, because that would be a win-win. My thought is if the Patriots are to lose, Mark Wahlberg would come into Brockton, and he's been here many a times, and he would put that Eagles jersey on the Marciano statue. If that's the case, I actually have a woman who actually called me up, guys, and donated 12 boxing gloves to this bet. So my idea would be, if we do lose this bet, I would bring kids down and put them in these gloves, because the gloves have the American flag on them. So that's kind of paying a homage to Rocky IV, where the whole theme of Apollo Creed was, USA and America when they fought Ivan Drago, and he dies. So I would, that's our kind of way of paying our homage to the Rocky films by using those gloves. So we'll see what happens there.
But they're not going to lose.
Look, I'm going into this because any given Sunday, like we said, any given Sunday, this team can play its balls off, this Eagles team. The question I have is, and we can actually get into this right now. The question I have is can Nick Foles consistently play like Carson Wentz, like he has been playing in the last 2 games? We've yet to see the real Nick Foley, and everybody knows that there is a real Nick Foley that has yet to show up. That's number one. Number two, the biggest problem the Eagles have had all season was with running backs who come out of the outside or out of the flat and can catch the ball. Here's the problem there. Patriots have 4 running backs in this game that they utilize as passing backs. Pretty crazy stuff there. So what do you guys got to say to that? Let's get into this right now.
Well, again, here's the problem, and I'm going to say this again. I've said it before and get yelled at. Offense wins games. Defense wins championships. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how good the Philadelphia offense is. The Patriots are going to shut them down. They have an okay passing game.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, but definitely solid. And they have an okay running game. You're not going to be able to run up the middle against the Patriots. You just aren't. You're not big enough to push their O-line. The O-line is not big enough to push people around, which means they're got the same things to the corners. And no one has been able to get around the corners of the Patriots. So you really don't have a great running game. And I'm sorry. I know we don't have Dante Hightower this year, but our linebacker core, our secondary, is looking very strong. So you're not going to be able to burn the Patriots on a lot of long passes, which basically means you're stuck with short yardage running and short yardage passing. And I'm sorry, you're not going to win the Super Bowl with that. End of freaking story.
We have to remember they also picked up James Harrison after Week 16, and James Harrison is a veteran who they picked up from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is a guy that they put out there, and now this defense is really bolstered by that veteran leadership out there on that line, and it allows the safeties to do things in that final AFC Championship game when Stephon Gilmore makes one hell of a play on the receiver and knocks that ball down. That's the type of thing that we're waiting to see.
And look, I'm a fan of James Harrison, although I don't think he's the game changer that everyone says he is. But there are times where he can just come through and just make everyone's life a living hell. And I think it's more important to have the threat of that than actually doing it, because you always got to be careful. Where's James Harrison? And you're spending so much time concentrating on him, you're going to miss the other 6 guys going around you and making your life miserable.
Yeah, pressure, and more pressure. Squid?
I think I got to give the edge to the Patriots. I do think it'll be a close game. The Eagles do have a very good defense, and I think that will keep the game close until the end. But I'm not convinced what the Eagles' offense is going to do. It's been sporadic. Yes, they blew out Minnesota, who had arguably the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, and they just blew them away with a big, they shut them out, but not shut them out, but they blew them away by a huge score with a lot of points against a really good defense. But they were in Philadelphia, and was this really a product of the offense really gelling behind Foles after a couple of weeks of getting into the system? Was it a one-off kind of thing? It's really hard to know, but you can't argue with success. The Patriots have a very thorough team. They've been here before. It doesn't look like Philadelphia is going to be able to run on them, so I think you got to give the Patriots the edge. I would say New England by 4.
Ken, any predictions on the score? What do you think by?
Yeah, I think it's going to be New England by 7. I think there are going to be a touchdown, but it is not going to be a blowout. And I think New England's going to need all 4 quarters to win this game. I would not be surprised if we go into the 4th quarter with the tie scored and Tom Brady's got to just, put it all on the table and come up with a touchdown. So I'm saying New England by 7 or less. I wouldn't be surprised if it was decided by a field goal. But I think I'm going with the touchdown. So New England by 7.
My feeling is this, that as much as I want to say this, can the Patriots go into another Super Bowl and make it historic? Every freaking Super Bowl that the Patriots have been in is in the top 20 Super Bowls of all times. The 2 Giants games, the Eagles game came down to a field goal. The Atlanta game was a comeback game. The Seattle Seahawks game was a great defensive play to close it out. Can we have that happen again? Can we see the Patriots have this close game and have this exciting win? Or are we due for the Super Bowl blowout that we've been waiting for? If you look at this team offensively, they can do it if they go with that game plan of the passing running backs. And if the Eagles can't stop those passing running backs, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a lot of scoring. Let's see what happens. Another thing, you have a Gronkowski that's going to play. You have to remember Gronkowski missed out on 2 Super Bowls, and then the one that he did get to play in, he only had 1 catch, and they had to keep him back in the blocking scheme. So, as much as I want to say that it's going to be a close game, part of me feels like that this game's going to be not a blowout, but I think the Pats are going to win this game by 14 this week.
Oh, no. I hope so. But I'm sorry. If you look at all the Patriot victories in Super Bowls, they've not been blowouts. Name 1 Super Bowl blowout.
That's what I just said. I said they haven't had a blowout yet.
No, I know. And they're not going to have a blowout. I mean, I am sorry. The Patriots don't have Julian Edelman. They don't have Dante Hightower. Brady is coming off, 14 stitches in his hand?
12.
Okay, 12, excuse me. Gronkowski hopefully will be cleared to play. I have a serious man crush on Gronk. But, if you want to looking for a blowout, you're going to need Brady at his peak, and he's not at his peak. You're going to need Gronk at his peak. You need Edelman. You're going to need Hightower. I'm sorry. They just, and also, Philadelphia is, they're the Rodney Dangerfield of Super Bowl contestants. They're getting no respect and no love. And I'm not a big Philly fan, but they have been showing everybody all season that every time you ignore them or talk down to them, they stomp you. So I think they're coming in here with a huge chip on their shoulder. They are looking out to take out the so-called evil the so-called evil empire, and they're going to play with their balls to the wall. So don't expect it to be a romp.
We'll see. It's going to be real interesting. Got a lot of stuff going on, and it's been great to watch this build up. And like I said, it's been great to have this whole Rocky versus Rocky, #Rocky versus Rocky attached to it. So I want to thank everybody for their support, everything that's just going on, and it's yet to end. This is going to go right up the gate, right to the end of the game. So we'll see what happens, and I'm great and happy that I was able to do something like this to make this special for me and my son, because it's actually all started because of my son Tyreek, who is an Eagles fan.
So let me ask you this, Sinister One. There's got to be some kind of side bet at the Casa just Sol Sinister One.
Yeah. If the Pats lose, the losing bet, I was gonna not be there, but my son he wants me to be there when they have to dress the Rocky Marciano statue. He wants me to be in front of it when they're dressing it. He wants the photos so he can blow it up and have an 8x10, 11x12, or whatever size picture he wants to hang in his room. And that's what he's asked of me. That's what he wants. He wants
That's not much of a bet.
Oh,
Win.
You obviously don't know how big of a Patriots fan I am. Can't let him know.
Oh yeah. No, this
I do know, but you're the one who organized the bet. I would expect you to be there no matter what, and I would think your son would ask for a lot more than that, like an Xbox game.
The humiliation of unveiling. Oh, it would kill him. At his son had a picture of it in his room. Oh my God, that would just be. That's all I can say.
My son knows me well, and he knows that picture that will last for an eternity is going to be the picture because here's the thing, when you come to my house, when you go down to my man cave, it's like a second Patriots Hall of Fame when you come to my house. I've got news articles from when they first went to the Super Bowl against Green Bay. So and my son hates the picture because he was a baby, and I've got him in all this Patriots gear, and he had no say, of what team he liked. So he hates. Yeah,
but none of that. It's the photograph that's going to kill him because his son will grab that photograph, make it his Facebook profile pic, and will use it every possible opportunity to humiliate his father.
I'm pretty sure it will be all over Facebook. He'll tweet it. It's just going to be horrible. And, all the people will get a good laugh out of it because I'm the big Patriots guy, and we'll see what happens. But, again, it's Super Bowl weekend, and there's a lot of Facebook hypocrites out there. And the reason why I say it is because, a few of us, we watch the games, and we tweet, and we Facebook message during the game, and we put little comments out there. And I remember the last Super Bowl when we were in, the week before prior to that, I had people who were complaining about us tweeting or saying stuff about the game, and then come Super Bowl Sunday, these people are out there worse than us talking about the Super Bowl, and it's like, hello, hypocrite much? So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be entertaining. Don't forget, Justin Timberlake is the halftime show. The big question here is Janet Jackson going to come and redeem herself from the last time the Patriots played the Eagles and Janet Jackson performed and Justin Timberlake showed up and we had the whole Nipplegate. Let's see. We'll see what happens, but it's good stuff. We're at 17 flying along. Another topic of discussion let's get into popped up on my Facebook page actually today. And it's Ken Deep. I tagged him in it right away. I'm not sure if R Squared was able to see the story because I actually just posted. I think about 2 hours ago, right, Ken? 2 or 3 hours ago.
Yep, something like that.
Out of Baltimore, I want to say it's 9 police officers have now admitted, and they were caught with toy guns. And I first saw the headline, I'm like, okay, what's the big deal about this? And then I read the story, and it just sent chills up my spine. So if you haven't heard the story, what's going on is that these Baltimore police officers, instead of carrying a burner or a heater like they used to carry back in the day, cops are now carrying toy guns in their possession. So if they accidentally, God forbid, if you shoot a kid, you now have a toy gun to place at the scene to kind of cover your ass or get you off. And the reason why this is a scary thing, and this isn't, when you read a story like that, this isn't something that these 9 police officers just thought of. It's not. This is something that's learned, it's taught, and it's known probably nationwide amongst a lot of police officers. This is something that's, because we've heard this years ago. Many years ago, you used to watch the old shows like McCloud and all this stuff where they go in and, cops would shoot a suspect, and the suspect was unarmed, and they'd keep the burner gun in the sock, and they drop the burner gun to make it look like. But now the fact of carrying a toy gun, and God forbid you shoot a child, and you put this to save your job or to save yourself from the public scrutiny or to save the department from all that's going to come down, it's scary. It just boggled the mind. And like I said, it's not just Baltimore. This is one of these things. It's not just Baltimore that's doing this. It's not just somebody went on my page and said, "Well, Baltimore's corrupt." It's not. One police force didn't learn this. This is learned behavior, fought nationwide. And I'm going to let because I know Ken's a defense attorney, so I know he's got a lot to say. I'm going to let R Square. Were you able to see the story? And what are your thoughts, real quick, before we let Ken go full diesel?
Yeah, I saw it. Look, I'd like to see what develops out of this. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. Obviously, if something like that is happening, it's incredibly intolerable for a lot of reasons. First of all, because it's commission of a crime and it covers up a crime, which we all know is a problem. And secondly, most importantly, law enforcement has always been a very trusted and trustable institution. That may not change because of one story, but when you hear things like this, especially if it was something that was pervasive, that was learned as part of the police subculture, and if it happened in multiple locations, it really casts a shadow on an institution that's very, very important to us for the rule of law, very trusted institution. So I'm more concerned about that. To see where that goes, to see how widespread this might be. If just a handful of people did this and they got caught now, then we could fix it. But if this is a real widespread thing, it's just awful, and it's going to have lasting negative effects on our law enforcement community.
Ken, you're a defense attorney. You do have friends who are police officers and stuff. So and I know this is a tough one for you. I just got to ask you, as a defense attorney, if someone was to mention this is one of those things that people would say, no, that's not true. That an officer would never do that, and it'd be laughed off in the courtroom, and they would tell you to go look elsewhere, counsel. That's not happening. But now you're hearing this and seeing this, and now it's going to be like, wow, this is just another thing that I can add to my repertoire to just prove a reasonable doubt. And for you, what does this say to you as a defense attorney? Do you think that this is something that you think is widespread?
Well, using throwdowns, that's what they call them, is not exactly an unheard of thing. I mean, cops using throwdowns, planting weapons, especially in very dangerous shootings, has been going on for years. The reason they're using now toy guns is because of the Obama era and the Clinton era things of documenting and tracking where these firearms have been. And in the old days, it was very difficult to determine how shall we put it politely, the provenance of a weapon. We have no idea where these weapons came from. So a lot of times cops would use weapons they'd seize, they'd pocket one just for later use. Well, now they know where that weapon was, so it's very much more difficult to use an actual weapon because they can say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. This weapon showed up in a burglary 6 years ago in the Bronx. What's it doing up here? And no one's seen anything about it. So this problem has been around for years. It really doesn't make any difference to me because it's already in my quiver of things I need to look for.
Really?
But, yes.
Hold on, wait a minute. You mean something like this is already out there? Something
absolutely.
Poses a question?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that you have to be very careful about, and this is the thing most criminal defense attorneys will tell you, that if you're going to make an accusation like this, you better make damn sure you're right. You do not want to, have egg on your face. Mm-hmm. So, if you're accusing a cop of using a throwdown, you better make damn sure you're right. And you need to make sure there's no chance in heck that your client didn't have a weapon or somebody else didn't have a weapon or something like that. So it generally doesn't happen in situations where you have a live client.
Mm-hmm. Because
if the cops, because a lot of the times if you have a live client, they're shooting at the cops. Well, there's 14 cops who saw the guy. Yeah, I saw the guy shoot at me. It's very hard to disprove that. I mean, I've never had a situation where a client survived and claims, no, they had a gun. I didn't see it. No, never had. I've never had it. I've had times where they've testified. They've expanded on it. Yeah, I had a gun, but I didn't pull it on the officer, or it was next to me, not on me. That kind of thing. What this has happened is what they call throwdowns, where you have unfortunately where the person isn't alive, and that doesn't happen that much, thank God. So yeah, but this is an issue you got always that's in the back of every criminal defense attorney's mind.
Wow.
But here's the thing: very careful with that. You don't want to make an accusation against a police officer unless you're absolutely sure. because that will destroy your reputation. And I've done it exactly once in my career, where I accused the police of malfeasance. And and I had a lot of evidence, because what had happened was, what they didn't know was it was a joint operation between the state police and the local police. And the state police had gone through and said, there's nothing there. We looked through it in their report, and they logged all the evidence in. Then the local cops came in and said, oh, they found this gun over there. So I was able to just go to the DA and said, look, just between you and me, you need to get your cops and find out what the story is, because state police get through there with their dog, and they didn't find anything. Then all of a sudden, this gun pops up after 4 state police officers, 2 detectives, and 2 units went through it. You may want to talk to your cops and make sure you get that freaking story straight, because I don't have to embarrass you with this.
Yep, go ahead.
And what's happening is, all of a sudden, the story changed. Yeah, we found the gun, but it was actually found outside. That was the Scrivener's there in the report. He should have said we found it outside, not inside. So,
like I said, it scared the crap out of me when I read this, and now I just hearing you say what you just said, it scares me even more. It makes me, and now what you're saying, it makes me feel like this is something that does go on.
Oh yeah,
it
goes on.
It's scary. So now, R Squared, after hearing Ken say this, that this is, and what are your thoughts now?
Well, I mean, what he says is it's a known thing, and it happens, and we've known that police have had drop pieces for decades. The question has always been, how prevalent is it? We know it happens in more communities than just Baltimore. There's no doubt about that. As you said, these things get learned. The question is, how often has this been a factor in investigating a shooting of some kind? And if we find out, I guess that we'll see what the investigation. Sometimes you just can't penetrate these things, but if the investigation can turn up statistics that shows that this is really happening in a significant number of cases, then we have a real problem, and it's going to take a long time and a big effort to fix it. If we find out that this is a known tactic, but most of the shoots are straightforward or whatever, and they don't do it very often, then it's something we could fix a little bit more easily. But it has to be addressed. That's for sure. This has to be addressed. We cannot tolerate this.
Scary.
I'd like to point out, that I think this is one of those stories. I think it's a man bikes dog story. It gets a lot of publicity because while it's horrific and should never happen, it happens only very, very, very few times. You're talking about only cases which involve a fatal shooting with an officer. Okay, so already, if you look at the hundreds and hundreds of millions of interactions between the police and the public, I would say 99.99999999999% of them do not result in a fatality. So then we need to look at the fatalities, and I would say most of them do not involve plants. It's a very, very small number, but any number is too big.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you that I didn't think that it was going to be a prevalent number of cases, and so if this is something that could be addressed, I still think that the leadership within the law enforcement communities on both sides need to take steps now to try to eliminate this as a practice. Now that we know about it, or we know about it better than we did before outside of the defense bar, and so It calls into – we just can't have things exist that call into question the trustworthiness and reliability and confidence we have in law enforcement. They're too important of an institution, and there's too much else going on right now, as we know, with these things. We can't tolerate another big issue like this either.
Well, here's what's very confusing about this whole thing too. 2 things. One, Baltimore didn't need this at all. They're already still fighting the issues that they have within their department, so they didn't need this at all. That's number one. Number 2, the scary thing about this is, okay, you're a police officer. God forbid you shoot a child, okay? Number 1, that's a shitload of guilt. And I'm going to use shit here because it is. That's a shitload of guilt for someone to have to live with. But then you go, and to save your job or to save yourself from the public backlash and scrutiny, and you plant the toy gun to clear yourself. How do you live with that double guilt? I would think that's the type of guilt that could drive a man to just I just think it's crazy. I think I couldn't see fathoming that doing something like that because you know what I'm saying? I don't know if you guys understand what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely. There have been a number of studies, not just regarding officer-involved shootings, even legitimate shootings where the officer was clearly permitted under the rules of engagement to shoot the person. Let's say there was a felon with a weapon or a firearm, have had horrible guilt about taking the life of another human being because these officers aren't psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine what it would be like if you take the life of a child mistakenly. There have been a number of times, and this is why it's so surprising, where you've had cases where officers have legitimately mistaken children with a pellet gun or a water pistol or something like that and actually shot them, and they said, look, it looked like a real gun, and they've been cleared saying, yes, it looked like a real gun, there was no malice intended, and this officer becomes an alcoholic or a substance abuser or something like that because they can't live with themselves even though it was a legitimate shooting. Again, why? Because it's theoretically possible that some officers out there may be psychopaths or sociopaths because they are part of the population, but by vast majority they're not. So I can only imagine the guilt.
No, I think you're right. I've worked with a lot of law enforcement at the federal, state, and local level in my career, and they've always been extremely competent, professional people. Now, that doesn't mean that their organizations don't have a few bad apples in it, but based on my experience and what I know, I will always trust and believe law enforcement until and unless they give me a reason not to in a given case. But overall, my bent is to support them because they're overwhelmingly a very dedicated, capable, trustworthy organization. I just think for the good of society, when an issue like this comes up that's going to raise challenges, it's important for the good of the law enforcement community as well as the confidence of the public, to deal with it straight up.
Tough.
And I think we are. And here's the other thing.
We are.
You're hearing about this is because there's been an investigation.
Right.
Again, I don't know if you know, there was an old joke from a show called The West Wing. I don't know if you guys ever watched it.
Yep.
Where they're talking about the fact that the bad news is that the Columbia Special Narcotics Units embezzled $5 million of the anti-narco money. And they said, what's the good news? Well, they at least had the honesty to tell us they were doing it, unlike last year where they lied about it. I'm not – the reason is there's, I think, 9 officers who are suspended and under investigation. I think the fact that we're taking this seriously and doing the investigation says, hey, look, it may have gone on. And there may have been some street education, as we call it here in Brockton, going on. But that doesn't mean we're tolerating it. And there's a big difference between those two things.
That's a great point. Great point.
Okay. The NYPD over years has had horrible problems with police corruption, but they've also done a lot of steps to clean out their own department, too. If you go back to the Knapp Commission in the 70s, and who was that guy? There was a documentary called The 7-5 about that corrupt cop.
Serpico?
In New York?
Not Serpico. In New York. No, this was in the 80s. It was after Serpico. Oh, God, I don't remember his name.
Oh, I know who you mean. We talked about it in my class last semester. I know exactly who you mean. It was one of our case studies. I'm not going to pull the textbook now to find it, but I know what you're talking about. It was a commission.
Yeah. Right. I'm looking up right now. Looking up right on Wikipedia. Blah, blah, blah. Hold on a second. My computer's now yelling at me. About the 75th Precinct. Michael Dowd. That's it.
Yep, Dowd. The Dowd Commission. Yep.
Exactly about Michael Dowd. But again, the NYPD took it on the chin and said, we're going to clean house ourselves. We're not going to wait for someone to come in and do it. And they did, and it was unpleasant. Well, again, look, I'm a criminal defense attorney. And I'll be the first guy to jump on the police. But they do a tough job, and most part they do it legitimately. And when there's a problem, the officers like to take care of it themselves. And people have lost their jobs. Matter of fact, was it last week or 2 weeks ago that we had a former police officer on our show who was bounced off the force?
Mike Dara. Yeah, we had.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. We had 2 weeks ago.
Crap out of us. Yeah, last week.
So, bad news is they're using throwdowns. Good news is we're finding out about it.
Yeah, scary stuff. Scary stuff. I'm gonna see if I can bring this other guy in here. I actually, out of respect, I didn't want to bring him into the call and go on. So we got another couple of tons of stuff we're gonna be getting through here. 7:35, flying along, trying to bring Z-Man in here. Real quick discussion. I had a video on my Facebook page of it was a bearded discussion that was going on because there was a video of a very attractive woman, and she was going around grabbing the beards of gentlemen.
Oh yeah.
These guys who have long beards. It's a great, funny video. It's kind of hilarious, but you know what? It brought up a big debate, and the reason why it brought up a big debate online is because we have this whole hashtag Me Too thing that's been going on at the Grammys, the Academy Awards. All these women now who are, they're up in arms about sexual harassment. They're up in arms about inappropriate touching and this and that of all sorts. And this whole video brought up this whole discussion of the double-edged sword, the whole thing where, the woman's attractive and she's going around, she's touching these random guys' beards without their asking. There was a couple of guys who were pissed off, she was invading their personal space. And then there were some guys who were just like, oh, wow, this hot chick is feeling up my beard. So I asked people to go out there and, chat about it and see what, and wow, the responses were pretty good. Actually, we had a woman that went on there and said, what's the big deal? She's only grabbing their beard, not their private parts. And that started the whole topic of discussion. There's a few guys that were like, wow, that, again, touching is touching and it's wrong. So I'm going to ask Ken, from a legal standpoint, is a woman coming up and fondling your beard, is that considered inappropriate touching? If this is done in the workplace, because I got to hear it, because we.
Yes. First of all, it's called an assault and battery, is what it's called. It's a criminal offense. Yes, if you go up and you grab someone by the beard without their consent, that is considered an assault and battery. Mm-hmm. And you can be criminally charged.
You actually saw the video, so that.
Yeah, I saw it. Now, there are, again, we're getting to the gray area of whether it's an assault and battery. Yes, it was a touching, but was there damage? I mean, you could have a wonderful, philosophical debate, but in its purest technical form, an assault and battery is defined as an unwarranted or unrequested touching of another person without their consent, which causes any physical, psychological, or mental damage. For example, if I were to go up to you and slap you on the shoulders, and that made you feel bad, that's enough to charge me with assault and battery. Okay. Now, there's a big difference, and I want to be very careful about this. Because I saw those comments, and I didn't want to wade in between an assault and battery and an indecent assault and battery, which is defined in Massachusetts as touching a woman's breasts, buttocks, or vaginal area without their consent, or touching a man's buttocks or penile area without their consent. That's an indecent A and B, which is a sex crime. Okay, the law draws a big distinction between touching what they call the erogenous zones and touching non-erogenous zones, and I think that line got blurred in the comments.
But it's still, again, it's still, because it was debated. I mean, I was surprised at how much it was debated on my page. I mean, there was a lot of, and the funny thing was that there were a lot of women who felt, that there was no problem with it. There were a couple of women that came on there and said that it was wrong, but for the most part, I was surprised to see how many guys said it was invasion of privacy.
Let me ask R squared, because R squared comes from an environment where your comportment, am I using the right term, R squared?
Yep.
Is very strictly regulated, especially in regards to officers, non-commissioned officers, and enlisted personnel. So let me, I hardly think, I don't think they allow beards in the military to begin with, but let's replace beard with hair, on top of your head. I do not think that would be tolerated for more than 2.5 microseconds in the military if someone were to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the criminal statutes are very much the same as you'd find anyplace else. And if you touch somebody without permission or legal excuse, then in theory you have committed one level of an assault or battery. And the issue is the reason that we have degrees of crimes is because we're not going to treat everything identically. Obviously, as you said, we draw a much more serious distinction for touching what you call the erogenous zones of male and female areas and that type of thing versus touching somebody's shoulder. However, the law says that people are entitled to their private space and you can't go around intentionally touching them. Now, obviously, there are accidents. Sometimes there's a legal excuse, all kinds of things. It's not like you always can get punished for that in any system, any criminal justice system. But the fact is that at some level, the law always prohibits improper touching of somebody, even something that people would think is innocent, like grabbing a beard or touching your shoulder. Most of the time, you're not going to get a prosecution out of that. That would be a waste of resources, and there are much better ways to handle it. But in theory, it falls on the spectrum, the criminal justice spectrum.
Wow, good stuff. Wow, I wasn't expecting that whole legal answer there. I thought here it is. I'm stupid because here I thought there was no legal ramifications. I just thought it was just simply space. I felt it was just invasion of space. So I didn't know that this, that there isn't. This isn't illegal. This is a legal issue, and people can be held accountable. Wow.
I mean, there's also the issue, and if I may, of a double standard and the reverse double standard. And I think this is what came up. Let's take, for example, if I go around and I bet every woman in Brockton down, I'm a slut. Okay. If a female colleague of mine bets down every man in Brockton, she's a slut. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If I go around pulling women's hair or touching them inappropriate, it's sexual harassment. But a cute woman calling on someone's beard, well, that's kind of cute type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting question we raise regarding the double standard about what genders can do and what genders cannot do. That's an interesting issue, that goes around. Like, I remember back in the mid-90s when I was taking my first classes on sexual harassment, we constantly got this question. Was it possible for a female to sexually harass a male subordinate? And you would be surprised the amount of answers we got back that most people, both male and female, thought that was not possible. Only a male could do it.
Mm.
Now it's since changed, but that's just a blast from my past.
Wow. So Frank Z-Man has now joined us. I actually purposely kept him off and had him waiting because, out of respect for, the conversation that we were discussing. I know sometimes that we have Frank, because Frank is a Brockton police officer. He is active. I know sometimes that, he's even asked us himself, hey, I don't want to be involved in that conversation because of blah, 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 blah. And, we respect that. And, at this time I felt that, at that conversation, didn't want to get Frank jammed up or have anybody, assume something or say something. So it was just best to leave him off air and bring him in once that discussion was completed. But right now, Frank, we've got you on here and we're chatting about the video that was on my Facebook page with the attractive woman touching the guys' beards. And some of the guys were pretty pissed off about it. And some of the guys, they liked it. And, there were a lot of women who said, what's the big deal? And there were a lot of guys who were like, no, that's not right. And, there were some guys on there who just simply, was upset about it. Ken and Robert R. Squared have just said that she did violate a law, and she could be held accountable. And I'm pretty sure you as a police officer, if someone was to contact you and said that this woman touched her, their beard, that you would have to respond. And it's funny because we used to do this Ask Z-Man segment, and this reminded me of Ask Z-Man because the chick's attractive, but then if one guy said on my page, if the chick was fat and ugly, then it would have been an issue, and that's the other double standard that we were talking about. So, Frank, I'm just going to ask you.
Yeah, that's just not appropriate.
Yeah. So, Frank, I'm going to ask you if you saw the video and what your thoughts were on it. Oh, is he not here? Frank?
Did we lose him? Z-Man, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can now.
I can hear you.
I'm trying to figure out the whole mute thing on these headsets. I didn't see the video. I've been on Facebook for a little bit. I've been sick, so I didn't see the video. But I was listening to the conversation with R Squared and Ken, and they're 100% correct. it is, she did commit a crime, for the most part. But and without, I can't really comment without seeing the video, so it's unfair for me to say anything, but it's all within the content. I mean, you gotta understand where the video started, where in the content of this whole incident did it start? You know what I'm saying? Did the video start? And we get this a lot, especially in law enforcement, when people are trying to hang cops for doing something, and they put out these videos that end up going viral. But where did the incident actually start? You know what I'm saying?
It's a number of guys. This chick, she's one of these internet people that you see with these internet shows. And what she does is she goes around and she does these random crazy things. So what this video is of her. She's walking around the streets of whatever city she lives in, and she's touching the beards of people. And, these guys, she's going around and finding all these guys with these long, crazy beards. And she's just walking up to them and she's grabbing their beards and rubbing their beards. And it's their expressions. Some guys are pissed. Some guys are not. So you're going to what I'm asking you to do, Frank, is I'm going to ask you to, if you get a chance, go on my page, watch the video, and then you can leave your comment there if you want to do that.
Okay, I'll do that. Something to me, it sounds more funny than anything.
The video is funny. It did start that whole discussion where it's like, wow, it's pretty crazy. So we got Frank with us. Frank, we actually broke down the Super Bowl before you came on, so I'm going to give you your time real quick to just break it down for us and give us your thoughts.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Everybody's talking about Nick Foles, and he can't hang with the Patriots and this, that, the other. I'm going to tell you what. Just like they were talking about, I need some help here. Jacksonville's quarterback last week, Bortles. They were saying that he's garbage. Just that, the other thing. Look, he got them to an AFC Championship game, so the guy can't be that garbage. Just like Foles, he played most of the season as the starter. Yeah, he's the backup, but is he truly a backup? It's going to be a good game. This isn't going to be a blow up by any means. This is going to be a good game. And, okay, you can make the argument that they blew out Minnesota. They didn't go up against Tom Brady. He hasn't played Tom Brady yet. So you can make that argument. But, I see it being a close game. I just don't, I don't trust this. I've never really trusted the Patriots defense out of the gate. I think they get better as the game progresses. I think as they progress throughout the game and as they're able to see what they're doing the other team's doing offensively, I think they adjust and they do better. But I just think that it's going to be very good. I'm telling you, it's going to be. I'd be surprised if it's more than 7 points by the end of the game.
Cool. And guys are in the chat. We're talking about this. Talking about the other big news today. They decided to steal some of the Super Bowl thunder today. I was watching Good Morning Football on the NFL Network this morning, and around 10 o'clock, they announced that Kansas City had agreed to a deal with the Washington Redskins to send them over Alex Smith. Alex Smith is going to make, I want to say it was $96 million after this contract's all said and done. So Alex Smith is now gone and sent off to the Washington Redskins.
Potentially going to make $96 million because what most people don't know about NFL contracts, and this is why I like to laugh about them, very few amount of the money is guaranteed.
Just the signing bonus money. That's the only thing you get in the NFL. That's it.
Yep.
And that's where that's when the Indianapolis Colts screwed themselves up and they had to get rid of Peyton Manning because they were the first. Because in the beginning, you weren't supposed to take a signing bonus and stretch it out over a period of time, but the Colts changed that. They filed for a rule change, and then they re-signed Peyton Manning and gave him this incredible signing bonus and stretched it out over, I think it was like 5 years, and then it ended up screwing up their cap, which is why he ended up, going to Denver. And teams weren't really. This was why teams were told not to do this. They weren't. You're supposed to get that signing bonus money right up front.
Right.
And once they made that league change, that's where it really screwed up teams, and teams are still getting themselves into trouble with that today. They're still giving out these humongous signing bonuses because at any time you can be cut, you can be released, like James Harrison, so.
Or kill somebody.
Yeah, Aaron, so.
Yeah, or, in case James Harrison, you get picked up by another team,
Yes.
And I think that's why you won't see the Patriots give out another big signing bonus.
Mm-hmm. And that was a legal issue, and the court ruled in the favor of the Patriots, so we're good there. So we got a lot more stuff to talk about in these next 10 minutes. Real quick news: the Madden Championships is going on this weekend on ESPN, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the Patriots, and I forget who the other team is. So we do have a representative from the Patriots this year in the Madden Super Bowl. Also, there's a big announcement from Microsoft. 3 exclusive games on the Xbox Live Game Pass, which is pretty big. If you're paying $9.99 a month, it's going to be $60 a month. A lot of thinking going on there. And the Xbox head said now that they may be looking into a service that's similar to Netflix, but with video games. That would, if this happens, this would change the industry as we know it. You would just get updated DLC and updated patches, and you wouldn't have to buy a game no more. You would get the game updated right to your system. It's just crazy stuff. So keep an eye on that. Last night we had our State of the Union address. Donald Trump's very first State of the Union address. And the funny thing is that I have a lot of friends that are on my Facebook page, people like Mike Jordan and stuff, who is now, it's hilarious. My friend Mike Jordan, I love him. We grew up together. He's out here now bashing Trump like no tomorrow. And it's like, but you voted for Trump. Well, I thought he was the best man for the job, so I voted for him. Well, you know what? All this stuff that's happening with Donald Trump, dude, if you did your homework prior to the election, you would know that this is exactly the type of guy that he is business-wise. So for people to come out now and flip and then complain after voting for him, those are the people that really irk the crap out of me. They really crack. And I love Mike to death. We like I said, together, but those are the people that irk me because it's like you obviously didn't do your homework. So we have the State of the Union address. Not only do we have the State of the Union address, we have this big rumor out there that Mueller's about to be fired. And Rosti may be let go, too. If that happens, this is going to turn the whole country upside down. But there were some things last night during this whole State of the Union that really just upset me. There was the big comment about him getting up there and patting himself on the back and saying, well, Gitmo is going to stay open. Well, dumbass, when you made the promise during your campaign run and bashed the crap out of Clinton and Obama about Gitmo and how you're going to get in here and close it, and it was like, well, if you remember correctly, Obama made that same promise, and then he realized it's not up to him to close it. It's up to Congress and other departments of the government to make sure we close Gitmo, and it didn't happen, and you used that as your platform to get elected, and now you're going to stand up here in front of everybody and say that Gitmo will remain open. Let's start with that one. So we're going to go around the horn with that first one that pissed me off. What are you guys' thoughts on that one? Let's start with you, R-Squared.
Well, Gitmo is an incredibly complicated question, and so a lot of people have a quick answer to it based on their sense of either the law or good policy, but it's really incredibly complicated. Obviously, it was originally complicated when President Bush in the first place decided to create the prison at Gitmo. Obviously, a lot of controversy at the time, but we'll put that aside for now. And as President Obama learned, as you said, you can't just go in and close it because, yes, as a matter of law, Congress has powers and they passed legislation and they have the money and they can influence these decisions. But more importantly than that, what do you do with these folks, right? The Obama administration had a policy where at a certain level they would release them. There was a whole process involved and a system in place, but certain lower level detainees were released. There are very few still there. We haven't had the trials that we were supposed to have. Remember, this whole thing was supposed to be a military commission system or at least some kind of trial system. And it's just been delayed, and problem after problem. And now we have something that was never envisioned when it first came about, at least not by the administration that did it. It was anticipated by certain practitioners. But, so you fast forward to the 8 years of the Obama presidency, and, of course, there was a problem with what do you do with the remaining people that you don't want to release or can't release. And of course, the president can't just do this by fiat. And now you have President Trump who, basically he was just going to criticize anything his predecessors did. That's what he's about. And he certainly had the past year. If he really believed in Gitmo, he had the past year to send people there. And from what I've been able to read, he hasn't sent anybody there. We haven't been using it other than to maintain the handful of people still there. So I don't know what we're going to see in the future. I don't think that we can tell from the comment last night. It wasn't well thought out. It wasn't an actual policy. He just simply said, I'm going to keep it open. Okay, that's a nice little heartstring tugger for people that really feel strongly in that. I mean, nobody supports terrorism. Everybody wants to see something happen, the right thing happen to terrorists that we capture. But he has not proposed a solution. And more importantly, since it's not really for the president, nobody in his administration has proposed a solution. They've had a year, and I'm not saying it's something they had to do the first year, but he's the one making comparisons to President Obama, and he's the one putting it in the State of the Union, and I have not heard a thing out of his administration on how exactly they're going to handle the terrorists that are there at Gitmo and what we're going to do in the future.
Ken, you're the big guy on broken promises, and this was a big broken promise.
Well, absolutely. So let me start out with all due respect to R Squared. This is not a complicated issue. There is clear domestic and international law of how we treat combatants. If they are going to be tried in civilian court, you try them in civilian court. If they are combatant, then the Geneva Convention applies. You don't get to pull this military tribunal crap. Okay? The one exception for that was during wartime when Nazi agents came on U.S. soil dressed as civilians. Okay, and that's still a decision that was looked at very sparingly. So Gitmo should have been closed down by an act of Congress. They didn't. R Squared is absolutely correct. No one has been sent there since the Obama administration took control. They've been slowly and deliberately giving people to third countries, etc. It was a stupid thing for Trump to say. He got no mileage out of it and a lot of pain. We're not going to reopen Gitmo. We're not going to send more people there. We're not going to ask for that kind of trouble. Eventually, these people will be released to who? I don't know. And not only that, we have no idea who's in there. The military has been very careful to keep any information about the detainees to themselves. There's only very, 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 very limited information. So it was a stupid thing for Trump to say. He's not going to send anyone there. Again, this is Trump being Trump, talking big and delivering the things about the size of his, member.
Frank?
Listen, I don't want to cut anybody off. Let me just say one thing real quick. Just
go ahead.
I was never a fan of opening Gitmo or the process that they created, so I'll say that for the record. But here's the point I want to make: is it's incredibly complicated, Ken, because of one thing, that terrorism and terrorists have never been necessarily declared as a category. And so the law is unsettled. And I've been doing a lot of writing on this. I haven't published anything yet, but on the fact that terrorists don't fall under any of these categories. And so it's up to the community of nations. Like, for example, U.S. policy has been to treat them with the higher status and treat everybody that way. And my position has always been that terrorists don't have any protections under international law, and so it's a whole different thing. Now, the bottom line is that's an unanswered question in the legal system, and so as far as what we do, I believe in using criminal trials, quite frankly, but it's not a clear-cut status. There's no Geneva Convention on terrorism, and they don't address that. They just the normal law of humanity and human rights applies.
Well, all due respect, Counselor, I would disagree. We do have laws concerning terrorism. If I take a boatload of or a truckload of dynamite and I drive to a federal building and blow it up, as someone did, I get tried and can be sentenced to death. If I do this in a foreign nation, for example, Iraq, and I blow up something or kill some American prisoners, we have status of force agreement, or we could try them in the U.S. court. The mere fact that terrorists are using terror as a weapon does not obviate what they are doing. They can be tried. They can be tried on a number of statutes, including RICO. And also, my humble opinion is if we're in an active combat situation and the U.S. military engages them, I think the U.S. military is cleared to, shoot them and leave them for dead. But this idea that we're going to grab someone off the street because someone told us that they're doing this and lock them indefinitely, I'm sorry. Either treat them as combatants in a military area or treat them as civilians, take them to civilian court. I don't care which one you do, but do one or the other.
No, I think you're right, and I don't disagree with that. My point was there isn't a Geneva Convention or a specific international law that gives any specific status to terrorists. So everything you say is correct, that they could be tried if they're caught, they could be killed and captured in combat, and any of those things apply. It's just that there isn't a specific international law that deals with terrorism as a separate category.
Yes. You are absolutely correct about that. And I'm sorry, I may have not properly addressed that issue. Right. Terrorism is never recognized as a unique combat situation. If you don't get any special rights on the Geneva Convention, if you're an armed combatant in uniform, you get certain rights. But also Geneva Convention does recognize irregular warfare like organized, and I say this, organized resistance groups that take on military targets only. That does not include civilian targets. But I would agree with that. The rest of the terrorists don't get protection of the Geneva Convention. And if I implied that at all, please let me apologize and retract that implication.
No, just wanted to be clear on that. I think we agree.
Good stuff. Frank, I'm going to let you chime in real quick.
Yeah, I like it. I think a lot of our problem is that we allow the press to get too involved, or people don't know how to keep their mouth shut anymore. I believe in this. There's certain ways to handle a terrorist. And they're not bound to the Geneva Convention, so we're not breaking any international laws when we have a terrorist in our midst and we're trying to get information out of them. I'm sorry, but something we have to get to the room of what's going on, and we have to get some information. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, And I truly believe that terrorist wise, we need this prison to stay open, and that's just my opinion.
And it's funny when Frank says he needs it to stay open. I remember hearing Obama, because Obama did when he was running, he wanted to close Gitmo too. And then what happened was he come right out and he admitted fault, and he said when he finally got at the position of president, commander in chief, then they let him, then you learn about the things that you're not privy to. And that's when he found out that, that they actually use Gitmo as a way of securing intel. In other words, they put people in there as plants, and they pull this information, and that's how they were able to stop some of these attacks across the world, and it's kind of, like last night, let's get into this other thing that Trump said. He made a real scary comment last night when he said that, America's going to keep their intel to themselves, and America's going to think about America, and we're not going to pay this organization for this, or we're not going to pay this. And it was kind of scary to hear that, because when you look at that, yes, we don't like paying money to organizations that we shouldn't really be doing business with. But if we're going to secure intel to stop attacks from other organizations, then sometimes you have to. It's like paying that CO that you hate to pay, or that informant. It sucks, but you got to do what you got to do to get the bigger fish sometimes. So when he said that, the question now comes down to, all right, well, you don't want to start paying organizations or sharing intel. You've already been under scrutiny when you first took office. We've lost more Navy SEALs, if I'm not mistaken. We've lost more Navy SEALs under President Trump than we've ever had lost. And part of the problem that's being said behind the scenes is that, one, we've lost our intel the way that we've gotten it, because Trump has gone this way of not wanting to share intel, and he's kind of breaking these ties with all these countries. So no one wants to share the intel with us. And it was rumored the Navy SEAL who lost his life in that night raid, where Trump was told not to go in because the moonlight was at a certain position and they were going to be seen and this and that. But it was also told that the bad rumor was, and the father said it, he said that they received bad intel on purpose. No one's been yet to prove that, but again, this gung-ho attitude and stuff like that. I mean, it to me, it's scary. I'm gonna let R-Squared take that one because he's a military guy.
Are you talking about the president's comment that he was going to cancel foreign aid, which is a State Department program for countries that don't vote with us at the UN, that type of thing? Is that what
it was all types of stuff he was talking about, just getting rid of. And he was talking about not giving intel up anymore, and we're not going to do this, and just all types of crazy, scary things that I think he's going to put our Navy SEALs and those guys that got their feet on the ground before the troops go in. I think he's putting these guys at severe risk. And I'm going to let you answer that. I'm going to let Frank, because Frank has been there.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'll keep it short because I took too much time last time. My point is, and we've talked about this on the show multiple times with different related issues, is we cannot survive in a go-it-alone kind of thing. Yes, we're very strong. We have great capabilities. We have some of the best people in the world, but we need to rely on some of the host nations to coordinate with. They've got great intelligence. They have capabilities. They have knowledge. It would be foolish of us to think that we don't need to coordinate with some of these countries, especially some of the African nations where we have a little bit less background and experience with. And we need those local connections on the ground for protection, for up-to-the-date intel and things like that. So it's very foolish to think that we don't have to cooperate, especially with our allies.
Frank, because you're one of those guys. You've been there. You know what the Navy SEALs and guys have done to get you guys, safely able to take something. You were there when it, and part of that was because the Navy SEALs had softened everything up. The Navy SEALs had made sure the beaches and the desert was ready to go. And now you risk putting these guys, their jobs at risk if they're not getting the proper intel, if they're not getting their backs backed up by those people on the ground that we've paid, but we're no longer paying. You know what I'm saying?
This is, I kind of say this is, I put it this way: this is the ultimate team sport, and you can't win it alone. You need allies out there. You need people that are going to feed you information. You got, you need the support. You need the help.
And even those that you really don't want to deal with, right?
You have to, something. There's going to be people that piss you off. I mean, there's going to be people that don't agree with everything you agree with, but you have to deal with them, and you have to, sometimes you just don't want to deal with somebody, but you have to deal with them, and you have to get it strategy. I mean, it's one of those things where you just. It's not a one-man show. This can't just be America does everything.
Yeah.
Because,
thank you, Frank.
we can't just do everything, and there's a thing called budgets, and to put our men and women out there in harm's way and have no support, well, that's foolish.
Oh my God!
And,
who are you, and what have you done with G-Man?
I was not. Because this is a guy, Frank. We're not gonna. We've all seen your Facebook page. We know who you voted for.
Oh no. Let me tell you something. There are some things I agree with that this guy does.
You're blowing me away
and
right
there
now.
are some things that I don't. But when you talk about the military, let me tell you something. And the one thing I was very happy was that he wants to fully fund the military, and he wants to put more money in the military, which is great because I think our military men and women deserve more money. And because they do a bang up job. But when you're talking about the military and putting our men and women in harm's way, and let's face it, there are going to be troops in Afghanistan and all that for a very long time, if not forever. And there's going to be some sort of force out there, and you have to be able to deal with other countries, and you have to be able to deal with other people because. And like I said, even if you don't want to, because they need the support out there. They need to be able to know who they're fighting and what they're getting into. And it's just, that's just the way it is. That's the way that the military works. And this guy knows nothing about the military. Sometimes he speaks out his asshole. You know what I'm saying? But it's just the way it is.
Ken? Ken's speechless.
I got nothing. R-Squared, you got to take this.
Well, no, I agree with everything Z-Man said, but I think that one correction, I think he does know something about the military. He knows how not to serve in it.
Someone go get the blankets, the bandages, and the cream. Somebody just got burned.
Oh my God!
Ouch! And we should say to all of our listeners who don't know the background of either R Squared or Z-Man, both these military veterans. R Squared is the 23-year veteran. Did I get that right?
24.
24-year veteran. And Z-Man served in combat in Desert Storm 1 as an engineer with, Third Armored?
Yeah, 3rd Armored Division.
3rd Armored. So we are talking about people who, talk about putting it on the line. They did it in droves. So,
Yeah, we're not. When you listen to the show, and I've said it before, I'm truly blessed. We're not here to blow smoke up people's butts. Like I said, you got a defense attorney, a former JAG officer, and we've got Frank, who is a Brockton police officer and was in the military. So when these guys are coming on, you heard Frank's voice. Frank was speaking right from the heart. I voted, and he just said it. I voted for Trump. But there's some things that if I'm going to have to call him out on, I'm going to call him out on. And Frank just did just that. He called him out on it. And again, he says, yeah, you can build up the defense and build up our military, but you damn well shouldn't be doing it at the expense of our lives by not securing proper intel. And again, the Navy SEALs, you're only going in with 5, maybe 6, a very small unit at that. And granted, they've got drones, and granted, they've got all this good stuff. But again, if you got shitty intel, you are putting our guys at risk. And again, we already have had the loss of 3 Navy, I want to say 3 or 4 Navy SEALs this year. It's the most we've ever lost under a president, and we just can't have that.
There's an old military adage that another friend of mine just served in the military for over 20 years, once said. It's called the 6P principle. Prior planning prevents piss-poor performance. And a lot of military officers and enlisted people, that's what they believe in.
Yeah. Sometimes you just get bad intel, though. It's just, you go in there, you think it's going to be a nice, easy roll in, and, you're just getting bombarded. So, sometimes, I remember we were going to blow something up, and we were getting ready to roll out, and it was everybody was supposed to be gone. And we go rolling. We were about to roll up out there, and there was a sniper in the area. So sometimes you get some bad intel. You know what I'm saying? You just don't get what you don't.
Right.
Sometimes you just don't know.
You know the old joke about intelligence. The only thing certain about intelligence is uncertainty.
Yeah, right.
So we ran a little over. We got a couple more comments. I'm going to ask R Squared this question real quick, and how I feel sometimes, and I get scared at how this type of stuff that Trump does. Trump is just burning bridges with countries left and right. And here's my fear. He brought up this whole thing with North Korea, and he was talking about North Korea and this and that and this and that. And here's what scares me. You make these comments about North Korea, but you're pissing off all these countries. You're burning the bridges with them. And just say, God forbid, it comes time where we might have to go toe-to-toe with North Korea. And now all these countries you burnt your bridges with, you've pissed them off. And now they turn around and say, guess what, Trump? Here's where we get you back. We don't want you flying over our country. Our country's a no-fly zone. How? Because that's the type of stuff that I think of because a lot of people, a lot of Americans, they don't think like we do. We have a lot of knowledge of things and how things work and how things operate. And how easy is it for a country to get themselves back at Trump and say, yeah, how about this? How about we have now said that we want our country as a no-fly zone? Guess what? That throws a monkey wrench into a lot of our strategic planning. And I'm going to ask you that one, Oswald, because you're a military guy.
Yeah, I'll talk about this. I see Frank wants to get in on it too.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll go quick. There are a couple of problems with it, okay? We saw this before when President Reagan decided to strike back at Gaddafi for the embassy bombing, for the club bombing. France decided we could not fly over France, and that put our forces at risk. In Operation Iraqi Freedom, much more recently, well, when I was there for the invasion 2003, Turkey wouldn't cooperate with us all of a sudden because of disagreement over the Kurdish policy and things like that. So it does happen at times, and it creates a lot of problems. We had to change the entire strategy because a large part of our forces were supposed to come through Turkey, and that couldn't happen. So, thankfully, we have the resiliency, we have the leadership, we have the capability to make adjustments like that. But you're right, Sinister One, that as a general proposition, we need to be able to rely on things. Now, the good news is we have some really strong alliances out there, especially with our fellow democracies. And they all know that leaders come and go. They all know that we have a deep relationship that goes back longer than any one president, prime minister, iteration of our Congresses and parliaments. So those relationships are going to last unless we had the same problems for multiple iterations of leadership.
Right.
So they'll still be there. These countries will still be there for us. And a country like North Korea, everybody recognizes that threat. So I think that that's not going to be so much of an issue. However, that being said, if they see us as acting recklessly and irresponsibly, they're not going to be inclined to support us right now. And this isn't the type of president who's going to beg. So, I think that there is a short-term problem, and the long-term problems will be fixed by future generations of our leadership team. But it's certainly not the right way to conduct business. That's for sure.
Frank?
Yeah, what I was going to say was, we got a president that thinks that running the country is like running a business, and I think he's finding out very quickly that it's not like running a business. That you have other countries who don't think ideally like he might think. The ideals are different. Everybody thinks differently. I'm going to tell you what. I think in the background, just like you don't see everything that goes on in the military and whatnot, in the background, as he's talking, there's people doing damage control already, letting our allies realize, talking to our allies and saying, something that, we got this. This isn't really going to happen, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And, like R Squared said, we have strong relationships with countries, and there's countries that will go to war with us, and they'll back us, with military if we need it. And I really do not think that anybody is going to turn their backs on this country if we have to go toe to toe with Korea, only because you can, just like we said earlier about Trump not wanting to deal with other people. Trump running the United States right now, but God forbid you don't help us, and then somebody else becomes president, and you turned our backs on the United States. You don't think the United States is going to turn their backs on you? You know what I'm saying? So it goes both ways. You see what I mean? So I really don't think we're going to have a problem.
Good stuff. Okay, we're at 8:17. We got to get ready to get out of here. We had a lot of stuff we had to talk about. We still had the Stormy Daniels. We had the rumors about Mueller and Rothstein. Real quick, we should get into that real quick. Your thoughts, guys, if this does come down, if they're both either fired or if either one of those are fired, what do you think is going to happen here? Ken, go real quick.
Real quick, blood on the floor. It will be a constitutional crisis. They'll make Watergate look like, playtime and romper room.
And I'm going to ask this. I'm going to throw this out square because one of the things that was said that did stick out to me was it was said that that there is things in this investigation with Russia that the public needs to know about, and it needs to be told. And that lets me know that there is something there. It's either conspiracy or it's collusion. And if there was nothing there, they would have said there was nothing there. They would have been said it. But obviously, with that statement, there's something there. What is it? We don't know. Collusion or conspiracy? We don't know. R Squared, your thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to spend more time on this in upcoming weeks, of course, because there's just so much there. But on your thoughts about what happens if they get fired, I would say that in the short term, unfortunately, nothing. Because you've got at least the House Republican leadership that's just unwilling to do anything. They're like the cover-ups in chief right now. It's very unfortunate to see this. I mean, these are people that have been somewhat respectable and honorable, like them or disagree with them or whatever our feelings have been. You can usually count on leaders to do the right thing when it comes to national security and the best interest of the country, and we're just not seeing it right now on this particular issue. So I don't know that much would happen, but it's not going to take much longer. First of all, if this happens, I think that's a big issue for the midterms because right now it's not a sure thing what's going to happen. This will certainly hurt the Republicans' chances in 2018 if he fires Mueller by firing Rosenstein first. So it's really – Ken's right. It's going to be a constitutional crisis, but it's going to take a while before we deal with it as a nation. All I can say, guys, is I hope it was worth it.
I'm going to let Frank answer, but before Frank answers again, we've had this discussion on this show before, and Ken and R Squared have agreed, that we need to know the truth. And my feeling is I'm still a skeptic. I still think for the sake of democracy as we know it in America, I think whatever happened, whatever they know, we're never going to know. That's my opinion. I think this is going to be covered. And if there was collusion or conspiracy, they're not going to – I think someone like Trump's son or Ivanka's husband there, I think either one of them take the fall, and we can't let Trump have this happen to him because I feel it would just destroy democracy. I'm going to let Frank give his opinion on it real quick now that he knows that everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that somewhere I hope he listens to somebody on that White House staff that tells him not to do it. I think it's a bad move. Let the investigation go the way the investigation is going to go, and we'll deal with it then. They got to let it play out. They got to let it ride out. And I think if somebody needs to, I mean, I'm sure they're telling them, if you do it, it's going to be a bad look for you, and it's going to look like you're hiding something. So just let the guy do his job and don't interfere with it.
Do you think we should know as a public, or do you think they should keep it quiet for the sake of democracy? What are your thoughts?
I think they should keep it quiet. It's just kind of like all this Kennedy stuff that's coming out now. I think once all parties are dead, like our great-grandchildren or something might get it, But for right now, just find out what it is, and just don't. I don't think it's the right time to say anything.
Don't let it happen again. So we had a lot of stuff. Ken, before we head out, Ken just put Trump's White House counsel threatened to quit if the special counsel was fired, and Trump backed down. So that's good to remember, guys. We got to get out of here. Good show. Wow, good show. Hour and a half. We just flew along. We touched base on a ton of topics. We left a couple of topics out, and you know what? It's a great show. Super Bowl, again, is this weekend. New England Patriots taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in Minnesota. Kickoff, I believe, is 6 o'clock. We still have hashtag Rocky versus Rocky is still rolling along. I am going to be interviewed on WATD with Kevin Tocci, and I believe he's going to be interviewing my son regarding this bet, and it's just, again, it's rolling along, and it's gathering some serious steam, and I'm really surprised at how it's gone and how many people have been helping support it. So I got to thank everybody for doing just that. So before we get out of here and close out the show, I'm going to go around the horn and let everybody say their goodbyes. Let me start with Frank tonight.
Just want to say thanks for listening. Thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoy coming on here and there and getting to speak my mind. Thank you very much. Good conversation. It was a blast.
Congrats on that other residual check that's coming too.
Thank you.
Me and Ken are looking to go to Casa Velada on your residual.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. That place is awesome.
Squid.
Hey, thanks for listening. Great show. Good stuff. We got a lot more to talk about, but this is Super Bowl weekend, so quite frankly, all I care about is the Super Bowl until it's done, and then I go into mourning till football starts again. So I just want to say this. I hope both teams show up healthy, ready to go. I want to see both teams playing their best football against each other. I want to see a good game, and let's enjoy it and have some fun.
Ken?
Well, a big thank you to all of our listeners, all 12 of them. Patriots Nation, keep the faith. And, hey, folks, guys, one important safety tip here. If you're driving a car sometime between now and the ending of time, there's a really weird stick on the right side of your steering column. It's called your blinker. You might want to think about using it once in a while.
Somebody pissed Ken off this week by not using their blinker.
That's awesome.
Use your blinker. Guys, we got to get out of here. Great show. Hey, Patriots, Eagles. I'm predicting Patriots by 14. And look, you know what? Usually I let SpongeBob take us home, but I think I'm going to do this tonight. I think borrow a page out of Tom Brady at the rally this past Monday. And here's what I'm going to say to you guys. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Booth out.